If you're watching on the recording, by the way, because it's been recorded, a lot of this doesn't apply to you. You can't move your gallery, you can't ask questions. So it's the favored group who are able to fully participate. But nevertheless, if you're watching the recording, thank you very much for your interest as well. So here goes, let's see what we can do. Let's share the screen. So hopefully, can the people I can see give me a thumbs up if they can see the first of my PowerPoint slides? John and Evie, thank you. Chaz, thank you so much. You're the only ones I can see, that's great. So here we go, 18 years of weed-busting activities, what I've called a journey through Chelmer Canal Trust's archives. And my first slide, whoops, some people are not quite on the picture, and my first slide is really indicative of a theme I'm going to carry throughout this. It's work parties removing pennyworth, but actually it's the people who turn up to the work parties that make the difference, that put in the work, a lot of hard work under all sorts of tough conditions, and our thanks must always go to them for being such brilliant supporters. Many of them have stayed with us for many years. And of course, the person who started off, Dudley Cortman, strangely and unusually not in his pink kayak there, you notice. But Dudley started work parties off. I think the first weed-busting work party was in 2001. And we've been going since then. The reason I've got 18 years is because that's as long as our archives in terms of pictures go back to. Just admit Hazel is just joining us. Indicative of Dudley's skill, intelligence, experience was this article. I'm inviting people all the time here, by the way, so this is the opportunity of being the host as well. 11th of April 2003, look at this. Weed takes hold of the river. Dudley Cortman, Chairman of the Chelmer Canal Trust, says the weed has taken control. And you can read the rest. He goes on to say, pending ecological disaster. Not be much boat on the long pond. 2.5 miles of the navigation blocked. Now, I want you to remember that date in 2003. Shall we just go back? No, my keyboard's not playing. But I want you to remember that date because I'm going to come on to that a bit later on. This is what we're talking about, just in case you're not sure. But to save you reading all the nasties, let me point out the nasties. It's fast spreading, grows quickly, thick mats, impedes water flow, ruins the means of use, cuts off native species, blocks out light, reduces oxygen, obstructs air breathing insects, and reduces water temperature. I think only coronavirus beats it, actually, in my opinion. It's a nasty weed. And you perhaps know this. The theory is it was sold in garden centres. Well, not theory is, it was sold in garden centres as a pond plant, an aquatic plant. Very nice because it grew very quickly and looked quite attractive. And the theory is that someone at the top end of the navigation or the river in Chelmsford was cleaning out their garden pond, the way you do from time to time, too many reeds and weeds and stuff in it, get rid of some. And they thought it'd be helpful to pour it into the navigation, give it a bit of life, give it some more, more diversity. So they put their floating American pennywort that they bought from a garden centre into the navigation, and away it went, and loved it, loves the circumstances, and romped all the way down the navigation. To block it, I'm going to move on fairly quickly from this slide. And by the way, those of you who are watching the recording, of course, can stop and inspect it. I'm not entirely sure this is floating American pennywort. Looks much more like watercress to me, but this is what it looked like just above Tesco's on the Long Pond. You can see the car park at Tesco's to the right-hand side there. This is what it looks like when it blocks a river. This is floating American pennywort blocking the river. I'm going to move on a bit quickly on this one because it's not actually on the Chelmer and Blackwater navigation. But this is, and this was the start of our sort of formal work on the Chelmer and Blackwater navigation. Local dignitaries and important people there, who some of you will recognise, who were celebrating the fact that we had achieved or been awarded a huge amount of grant aid to be able to start removing floating American pennywort from the navigation. And this again, I think, is on the Long Pond, just above Tesco's, or maybe further up towards Beeley. You'll notice in the background there's a boat pushing some weed towards what you'll see on the next slide is a JCB, whoops, on the right-hand side. Fabulous, isn't it? You know, those of us who pulled weed out, floating American pennyworth out of the navigation will know it's heavy, nasty stuff. And if there's something that can lift it out easily, then that's pretty good news. However, just check, it's not a particularly good quality picture, but just check the condition of the river downstream of the boat that's pushing the weed up. There's an awful lot of stray weed going down there. And again, those of us who know about this knows that it only needs a stem and a leaf to float away. A root can grow from that and it will become established. So if you think of the number of little weedlets that are going down below that boat, that accounts for why it's taken us so long to be able to remove pennyworth particularly from some particular places on the navigation. Let's carry on. Very early days, you'll perhaps recognize Dudley there in his pink canoe. And his technique was to get one of these large rafts, paddle like fury, and push the raft to the side for removal from the side. I'm not sure, William, is that you in the inflatable there? It's a red inflatable. I don't recognize you in that, but I think that's maybe William, but he can tell us that either now or later.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, there's William and Dudley, the two founders, as it were, dealing with pennyworth in the very, very early days. And William, you'll perhaps be able to tell us where that is. It looks to me like a little bit like it might be Barnes Mill.
That's actually just above Beeley Weir, and that was a work party with volunteers from Ford Motor Company.
Ah, okay.
And at that stage, we were actually manoeuvring the pennyworth to the weir and then using crones to sort of pull it over. But a few weeks later, we were told to desist from doing that because the Port of Malden didn't like it clogging up their port either.
Or indeed the propellers of their fishing boats. I'm not surprised about that. Okay, so thanks for that input. To carry on then. One of our main techniques, and again, apologies for the not brilliant quality of some of these pictures, one of our main techniques was to float these very, very large mats of floating American pennyworth down into the lock by opening the bottom paddles and getting it to float in. And then, as you can see, getting a load of people on them and pulling the weed out with chromes and with one or two devices that Dudley made, which consisted basically of a piece of wood with 6-inch nails driven all the way through it, attached either to a handle or to a rope, and throwing that out into the navigation onto the pennyworth and then dragging it in was pretty effective. And it was a lot of hard work, and it was done very successfully. And this is one of our sort of iconic pictures that we like to roll out from time to time. I'm sorry I haven't got a better quality picture of it, of one of our first Chelmer Canal Trust groups standing beside a very impressive pile of floating American pennyworth that they've pulled out of that section of navigation just below Sandford Lock. In fact, many of you will recognize it is under the A12 bridge, the A12 bypass bridge, just outside of Chelmsford. Another impressive pile, although I must admit to cheating on this one, I asked them all to kneel down before I took the picture. And so it continued, year on year, lots of pennyworth had to be pulled out. And I think it took us a while to understand that while all this very physically intensive work was going on, at the same time, we had to ensure that we were using a zero tolerance approach to removing the weed, because as soon as I said already, a weedlet or two broke off and floated away, that will be next year's crop. And I was thinking about volunteers. I've said that's a theme of mine. Well, volunteers are, lovely quote, volunteers are not paid because they're worth less, but because they're priceless. And indeed, any volunteer who's here tonight, you are priceless, thank you. But I want to put a value on it. Let's just look at this. I think we've been going for about 18 years of photos. and about 12 work parties a year. Sometimes we had more, sometimes we had less. So conservatively, 12 work parties a year. That's about 216 work parties. Stick with me, you mathematicians, by the way, especially Susan, because I want this checked. 216 work parties, 3.5 hours. Again, that's a bit conservative. Very often we start at 9, finish at 1, that's 4 hours. But let's take half an hour off for our break. So that's 216 work parties, 3.5 hours, 756 hours. Okay, 756 hours, 10 volunteers per work party. That's probably a bit low because very often we've had 12, 15 in the early days, maybe 20. So 10 is perhaps a bit low. 7,560 volunteer hours. I can see some of you doing the maths now, writing it down. Well done. Okay, let's put a price on that. So 7,560 volunteer hours. And we need to know what a volunteer is worth. Well, if you look on various sources of information about volunteering, they reckon a volunteer of average skills is probably, I'm sorry if you only believe volunteers who have average skills, but rather than managerial skills or so on, it's worth about the median national wage. The median national wage in 2011, which is about halfway through our journey, so before then it was less, since then it's been more, was £12.56. And this is a shame because I think the total is going to come out just under the bar on the right-hand side. Oh, at least the pounds are there. So that's £9,495 worth of work we volunteers have put in to the navigation. But wait, if we'd had to employ those people, we'd have 20% on costs, holiday pay, pensions, administration, and so on. So that's going to take us the grand total of £11,394.43. Not a bad contribution, I would say, in financial terms, or as a financial value to weed lifting, weed busting, weed clearing. And of course, volunteers get something back. It's well known the advantages of volunteering in terms of one's self-esteem, belief in self, enjoying the outdoors, socializing with others. It all comes into it. And one piece of research says that 96% of volunteers said volunteering makes them happier. And I'd like to think, I can see a few volunteers looking at me now, I'd like to think that our volunteers enjoy work parties and feel happy as they leave work parties. We like some smiley faces in our work parties. And indeed, we get some smiley faces in our work parties. So hopefully all is good. All is good for me because I have to get up ridiculously early in the morning to collect equipment and so on. So it's occasionally a delight for me to see a sunrise like this and a sunrise like this over Northey Island before heading off. But it's not all plain sailing, is it, volunteers? Pretty cold day this one to be going off litter picking along the side of the long pond at Heybridge. Cancelled this work party. That workboat wasn't going to leave its mooring, was it? And even if it did, the ice was so thick that we wouldn't get anywhere. So that was one of the times we had to, in terms of the safety of our volunteers, cancel a work party. Times of flood. We've been out there. A bit worrying this because we don't know where that pennyworth's going to be washed to as the river floods down, but we're out there under all circumstances. And times of rain. Well, Steve seems to be enjoying himself. Coracle Man Steve seems to like it there. I'm not sure the other three are liking it quite as much, but nevertheless, we're there. And sometimes it's a nice day, and you might be thinking, oh, that's lovely, isn't it? But just look at the pennyworth, either side of the navigation there. And just a warning, folks, those of you who know that we've got a work party on Friday week, I emphasize Friday week, it's not quite as bad as that in that part of the navigation, which is below Cooton and round the bend, as it were, on the way to Stonhams. But it's getting that bad at the moment, which is why we'll be working there. Well, how do we get to our work parties? It might be by foot. And here's Norma. I think we got her to test out this bridge before the rest of us went across it. Bit of a spring bridge that with just one long plank and no support, but she made it and so did the rest of us. Essex Waterways very generous in lending us their work boats, and here were 3 people on a recent trip. Here's a couple of people on a trip maybe 10 years ago, coming back with a workboat absolutely crammed full of floating American pennyworth. Always good to have canoeists around, and thank you to all our canoeists. I do notice, by the way, this one, if you spot the bubbles of air in the water, that must be under ice. And these folk have got this far down the navigation by breaking through the ice to get there, which is pretty impressive, isn't it? Another of our canoeists showing the pennyworth he's collected. And inflatables, a couple of people are able to bring inflatables, which is absolutely brilliant. Stand-up paddle boarders, they join in occasionally, and they are really helpful, and they're especially good at litter picking, it has to be said. Our jointly owned workboat, we own it half and half with Essex Waterways Limited, and this is another brilliant facilities that we use for weed clearing. We couldn't miss out on Steve, at least one picture of Steve in his coracle. This coracle not quite as good at being used for weed lifting, weed clearing, but he's got 2. And the one he's sitting in there, and the one he's sitting in there and demonstrating is absolutely perfect for hauling pennyworth over the side of the coracle, as indeed did Welsh fishermen haul their fish, their salmon over the side of the coracle on that sort of flat-backed coracle that Steve's in there. Dudley again in his pink kayak. And of course, if we want to get down and dirty, well, you better get in the water. And so more recently, we've got folk who are prepared to get in the water. And if you look very carefully, our latest additions to our armoury, 4-metre long extending poles with hooks on the end, so that on narrow ditches and so on, we can get to the far side of the ditch to get the remote pennyworth they might not otherwise be able to get to. And latest of all, at our last work party, Essex Waterways joined us with one of their weed lifting boats. And again, in the right place at the right time, lifting huge rafts with a weed lifter is really helpful, saves time, and can be efficient. So that's another brilliant addition to what we've been doing. We also do some litter picking, litter clearing. This looks like Dudley to me, although it's not unusual to see Dudley outside of a kayak and not in a pink kayak. I'm slightly worried about the bottle of liquid gas that's very close to the front of that bonfire, but I'm assuming, knowing Dudley, that it would be removed before the bonfire was set on fire. Been joined by all sorts of people in our litter picking efforts, as you can see. Enjoyed by many. And always, well, not always, but often a good haul of litter. But just in case you thought that, oh, it looks like it's litter picking goes to the ladies and the blokes get on to all the hard work, I had to include this. Now, the person in the purple anorak here is Sam, who you saw in a previous picture doing litter picking. She is sort of partway up a tree, handing a crone, chrome's just over here if you can see my cursor, to Angela, who's standing on a half-submerged but floating log, pointing out into the river, into the Langford Cut here actually, determined to get some pennyworth that would otherwise be out of reach. So don't think we're sort of, we've got any approach that says ladies do one thing, blokes do the other. It doesn't work like that at all. And here's some further proof. The cleaning up done by our amazing and very, very loyal volunteer, Barry Kirsten here. And just to add, again, thanks to the generosity of Essex Waterways Limited, our new shed, the white one on the left, not the canoe store, which Dudley built in the early days. The white one on the left, smashing, given to us by Essex Waterways Limited. All we had to do was put some roofing material on it, make some fittings for inside. And we now have a shed that I have to say is many, many, many times tidier than my own shed at home. That shed also houses one of our more recent additions. That's, again, in conjunction with Essex Waterways Limited, weed spraying equipment. I might be getting a sharp intake of breath from some of you. Weed killer being used on the navigation? Yes, but only in very, very, very specific circumstances. Our preferred method, our main method of removing pennywort continues to be manual removal. We've been doing that for 18 years. We know it works. But there are just one or two places where we either can't get to it or it's so tangled up in other things that we can't remove it. So although we haven't started yet, we're on our way to being able to use glyphosate, as I say, in very specific places. And here indeed is one of the volunteers who I can see online tonight practicing using our knapsack sprayer. Although you can't see it very easily, he's holding a long lance there. It's John, of course, although John doesn't seem to recognize himself at the moment. Yeah, no, he does. And he's practicing with water, seeing both how far we can spray distance-wise across a ditch and how much liquid we're going to need to use over particular areas of pennywort. Of course, it's not just the main navigation. One of our challenges is that over the years, probably because of flooding, pennywort that would otherwise be in the navigation has been lifted up during times of flood and put into the various ditches and feeder streams around. This is the feeder stream, the Springfield Meadows stream that flows across Springfield Meadows. Always a challenge for us, and you can see the amount of pennywort there is further down there. This, I think, is the ditch just very close to Ricketts Lock, maybe, with Steve showing how ideal it is to get a coracle in there where we wouldn't be able to get any other vessel at all, but because of the surrounding vegetation, nor do we be able to get in ourselves. Three of our on the water folk all at the same time, and many of you will recognise that as having been taken from the narrow footbridge near Sandford Mill, where the stream I was talking about earlier comes down past where Stephen the coracle is and joins the mill stream that then flows round to join the navigation just below the moorings at Sandford. And this is a place many will not know, one of two creeks just up the River Blackwater from the floodgates of Beeley, or the Beeley Weir, if you like. When we arrived for this work party, pennywort covered the entire pond, as it were, there, which leads out into the navigation. And these guys are very carefully pulling the weed in, and the whole raft of weed, everything that covers the pond there, is coming in one lot to be removed, and in bite-sized chunks, as it were. Now, take a look at this. We've been weed clearing for something like 16, 17 years, and this article appeared in one of Essex and Suffolk Water's publications. A new action group to tackle invasive river species have been set up. Through the work, this was work at Langford, it became clear that pennywort wasn't just confined to these areas. There have been other outbreaks of pennywort along the entire 13-mile length of the Chelmer and Blackwood navigation, from Springfield Basin in Chelmsford down to Heybridge Basin in Malden. Take a look at the date, 14th of June 2018. It took those guys a long time to catch up with us. We'd been doing it for 16 years by then, but they caught up. Onward then, we're still battling with pennywort. We got it down to a pretty manageable level about 4 or 5 years ago, and then something happened that meant that particularly last year and this year, there have been very, very big outbreaks and large rafts growing. So here we are on a recent work party with two of our keen volunteers hauling in pennywort on the Long Pond. There we were not so long ago, this was in 2019 though, last year, downstream from Sandford Lock on the way to Cooten Lock, and in fact this feeder stream feeds in just below Cooten Lock, those of you who know the area. The challenge of the Langford Cut, that what was the original canal that went up to a farm just at Langford, The cut is still there. It's very overgrown. An awful, awful place to work in. But nevertheless, our volunteers do a brilliant job in clearing pennyworth there. And that's really necessary because that flows into the navigation below the floodgates at Beeley. So anything that flows out of here flows into the Long Pond. The Long Pond being slow flowing, again, is an ideal place for pennyworth to establish itself. And again, Upper Cooton, the opportunity without too great a water flow to get right up close and personal to the weir there and remove not just pennyworth, but any other crud that was sitting on the weir. Barry taking care of a raft there using one of our several techniques. Grab the raft, release it, tie it somehow onto the workboat and bring the workboat ashore somewhere where it's easy for the volunteers to remove the pennyworth up the bank, and away we go. And that's what it looks like. Take you a while, John, to say you're monitoring the situation well there. You're looking like you're checking it's being done properly. So, just coming to an end, really. This is a group of our volunteers. We rely on our volunteers. They're priceless. Hopefully, they look like this group do, having a good time, enjoying being out in the fresh air, and doing something that's really worthwhile. So if you want to see more, you can look at our website. We've got pictures over the years, some of which I've used and others which I haven't. There's the website URL there, but you can easily find it just by going directly to our main page and take it from the menu bar there. Or if you want to understand more, why not come along to one of our work parties? Dates for all our events again can be found online, and you'll find them at that link to our website. But again, just going direct to the homepage of our website will take you there. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about our CCT work parties. Hopefully that's given you either an insight or a reminder of what we do. I could go on all night, but I did say we'd finish before midnight. So just going to finish now and see if we've got any questions to take. Well, I'm not sure it's stunned silence or total boredom, really.
Neil, we just wanted to say we're up for Fridays. We're free on the extra Friday ones if you'd like to put us on the list.
Okay, that's brilliant. I think I've already got John already, but if not, I'll add you to my list.
I have to come because I want a hot cross bun.
Ah, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I need to make this very clear now that with the COVID regulations, all the refreshments, you had to bring your own hot cross bun. All the refreshments now are COVID secure refreshments that no one else has touched before they get to you.
Yeah, right, I'll bring my own.
A bit of good news, Neil. I had my knee operation at the end of January. Made a very quick recovery. I'm now much more able to remove pennyworth than I was any time during the recent months. So
that's really good news. Thank you, John. We look forward to seeing you.
Yes, no, sorry, I was just going to say that I think, I would have jumped in earlier, but you said not to. I think you've understated the financial benefit of the volunteers' work by a factor of 10.
£110,000.
Absolutely. I mean, I
think maybe we've got a frozen Lord Peter.
No, no, sorry. Hi, Chris. No, I'm simply drawing that to your attention.
Well, thank you, Lord Peter.
I'm open to contradiction, but I think because was it 7,000 and something hours by £12 an hour is knocking on for 100,000 rather than. Yes. Hello. Just saying,
Thank you.
That sounds more in line with today's prices.
Just add to that as well. Went from paper mill lockdown, and there's quite a big one or two big rafts down that way as well. Still, don't know what the rest is like.
I'm not listening, John.
Neil, I hope you're listening. Can I, on behalf of Essex Waterways, say thank you and your volunteers very much for all you've done over the years. And obviously you have kept on top of it and, you know, saved us a great many problems. So thank you and your volunteers very much for what you've done.
It's kind of you, Roy. Thank you very much. Well, we're working well in partnership, aren't we? So between us, we're going to crack it.
Exactly. Thanks a lot.
Neil, do you have room for another one on the Friday? I'm hoping to be able to get there if you've got space.
Yeah, as long as people email and I confirm back to them, then we'll organise things so we don't break the rule of 6 by having separate briefings and so on. But yeah, we can take a few more certainly, and it's been good to know we've got 3 more tonight. So that's great. Thank you.
I walked along the river last night and it was certainly encroaching into areas. I saw it myself, so yes.
Okay, William, that sounds like that's the end of the questions. So I think back to command, base command there.
Is that me? I don't feel that way. Oh, well, thanks so much for that. Especially for me, who is not a volunteer, I have to point out. I don't turn up at work parties, to my shame. That was very educational, apart from anything else. But thank you so much for that. It has made all this worthwhile. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that concludes the entertainment, does it not, William? I think so. Neil, you've got control of the meeting, so it will be down to you to end it, I think.
Oh, well, I've got power and control now. So everybody, yes. I think Susan, I need some checks signed to go to my personal account. So if we can get that.
I've got 2 broken arms at the moment. I haven't really.
Okay, well, on behalf of Canal Trust, thanks for attending, everybody. Stay safe wherever you are. If you're able to join our work parties, please do. But of course, it's different interests for different people, so there's no expectation that people should be part of the work party. But thank you for those who do.
Thank you for the talk. It was good.
Okay, so I'll say goodbye, and I'm going to end the meeting now. Goodbye, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
See you Friday.